Hey you guys, welcome back to my channel. It's me Anshika, and for today's video I was thinking of what to make, and then I thought maybe I should make something which is not so study related, because I feel like I've been going really heavy on the study academic type of content lately. So I decided to do something which was a bit different instead. And so today I will be talking about all the books that I've read in the past year. And these are not all the books technically, these are most of the books that I read in the past year. Like today I'll be talking about around 15 books, but I think I read around 22 books in like the past year or so. And I've decided to divide the video into different categories for like different genres of books. So category number 1 will be like romance, young adult kind of novels. Category number 2 will be murder mysteries and thrillers, and category number 3 will be other books which don't fall into these two categories. Timestamps will be in the description if you want to skip. The first book I'm going to talk about is The Love Hypothesis by Ali Hazelwood, which those of you who follow Book Talk would know how popular and hyped up this book is. If you haven't read this book, then this is like, if you're going to read only one book out of all the books that I talk about in this video, then please let it be this one. This book is like, I would rate it 5 out of 5 stars. This is enemies to lovers. This is like workplace romance. This is fake dating. It has all the tropes that we love so much. It has all of that all combined in one book. And to add to that, it is like a STEM novel. I'm not gonna reveal much more than that because I don't want to ruin it for you guys. But I love the style of writing. Like every chapter style starts with like this small hypothesis. This was also one of the first romance novels that I read, because earlier I only used to read like murder mysteries and thrillers, and then I started going towards the direction of like romance novels, and this was the first one I read. And the best part about this book, that I found the best at least, was that the characters actually have lives and they have things to do, like important things to do, which are not just sitting around and thinking about their partner all day, or just being together all day. Like, okay, moving on to book number 2. This was the second book that I read. Like, I was so happy with The Love Hypothesis that I decided to read another book in like the romance genre, and it was The Unhoneymooners by Christina. This book also like lived up to the hype. It's also hyped up on Book Talk, but not as much as The Love Hypothesis. I would rate this like a 3.5 out of 5 or like a 4 out of 5, in that range. It has the enemies to lovers trope. It has a bit of the fake dating element as well. Female main character, basically she feels like she's like the unlucky one in their household. And she basically has a sister, so she thinks that her sister is like the lucky one and she is the unlucky one. It also has like slow burn. It has stuck together, and the plot twist in the end is so good. And also the best part about this book, other than like the romance between like the main characters, is the way family ties are portrayed in this. Moving on to book number 3, which is The Spanish Love Deception by Elena Armas, which once again, if you're somebody who follows Book Talk, you know this book. It's so hyped up. I wouldn't say it's overhyped. I think it definitely deserves the hype that it gets, but again, it's not as good as The Love Hypothesis. It is fake dating, it's grumpy sunshine, it's also like a office workplace romance and slow burn. But in my opinion, it was a bit too cheesy or like too cliched. This book is really good. It's easy to read. It's very like light, and I'm absolutely in love with the characters. Like, this is the kind of characters you make like fan edits about. So definitely read this one if you're like thinking of starting romance novels. Okay, so book number 4 in this category is Most of All You by Mia Sheridan. This book is another one which is a 5 out of 5, which is right up there with The Love Hypothesis. Though the plot is quite different, it's still really great. The characters are like grey. They're not like exactly the most likable characters. They have so much depth. The character development by the end of the book is just fantastic. This book literally gave me like soulmates vibes. though it is a bit heavier than the other romance novels I read, because it involves like traumatic childhoods, it involves a lot of like heavier themes. It's not that easy to read and just, you know, like a chill vibe where they're like fake dating or something. It's not like that. It's very deep. It's a bit like, you know, two broken souls who are healing themselves and healing each other in the process. It's also a book where the guy falls first. It has some like really great thriller type sections in between as well. But this is again a book where you would want to look up some trigger warnings. It's a bit more realistic than most romance novels as well, just because it doesn't give you like a straight up happy ending. Like, yeah, this is definitely a book that is, I think, really underrated. And again, if you want to read something other than the Love Hypothesis, read this, because I would give it a 5 on 5. Okay, the next book that I picked up after these was Today, Tonight, Tomorrow by Rachel Lynn Solomon, and I hope I'm pronouncing her last name correctly. Okay, so this book I would give it a solid 4 stars out of 5. In my opinion, I found it better than the Spanish Love Deception. So this book basically has academic rivalry and like high school teen romance. Basically it's about these two overachievers whose relationship with each other in the course of 24 hours. So like this book is written over 24 hours with like timestamps in it. And it's also the 24 hours, it's like their last day of high school. This book was so relatable because I just finished high school, and when I was reading this, it was also the time where like high school was ending in a couple of months. So I found it so relatable, and it also features a lot of like text message conversations between characters, which was like so well written. Like that's how teenagers today talk. So like kudos to the author for like hitting that spot on. This novel, it's like enemies to lovers, but it's less spicy and more romantic and cheesy, but it's like the good kind of cheesiness which makes you giggle and like makes you go aw. So like it's a really cute novel, but it's kind of like The Hating Game, if you've read that, which is also another legendary novel. It's so good. Okay, so it's kind of like The Hating Game but in like a high school teen context. It's kind of like that. Definitely a book which will make you like, which you will find so relatable, because it depicts today's high school environment so well, right from like the college applications to, you know, the overachievers being stressed about being a valedictorian, the various high school clubs, and you know, school council elections and things like that. So it's really well written. Okay, so the last romance novel that I'll be talking about is Wish I Could Tell You by Durjoy Datta. Now this is the book which I read most recently, and to give you a bit of background, Durjoy Datta is an author which my mom read like a couple of his books, and she didn't really like them. She told me like the plot of most of those novels, and I didn't really like it as well. But then when I visited the library recently, I thought, okay, I have to, you know, give every author a chance. So I picked up a book, and I would give this book like 2 stars out of 5. I didn't really enjoy it, maybe because it was quite different from the normal kind of romance novels that I was reading before it, which were, you know, not in an Indian setting. Also, like the style of writing of the Durjoy Datta is quite different from what I'm used to. So this could also be just my opinion, because his books have received a lot of accolades from like critics as well as the public. But personally, in my opinion, I would give this book a 2 out of 5, because the ending was like it was a loose end. There wasn't any happy ending, which personally, being a teenager, I'm like a fan of happy endings still, as cheesy as it may be. I don't like, if not happy endings, I want them at least to be complete endings, not just like left midair. I feel like this book had too many characters which weren't really necessary. They didn't really add anything to the plot. I don't know why they were introduced in the first place. Like, they only made the book that much more difficult to read, because it's difficult to keep track of that many characters, and personally I tend to forget the names of characters if there's like 10 different characters. I also feel like, okay, so this novel, it kind of goes oscillates between the past and the present, which I feel like the author didn't really do a good job of. Like midway I was just confused and I just wanted to like not read anymore because I didn't understand what was happening. There wasn't anything which was like gripping. Instead I was just getting irritated by the fact that the book was going, you don't even know that it's going in past and present till the end. You think that it's like all happening simultaneously, and that makes it even more confusing because you don't even know that it's like past and present, so it's just kind of confusing. I think that like the relationship between the characters is also a bit complicated to understand. In some places the backstories of the characters have been made unnecessarily complicated. The novel also seems a bit overstretched to me. Like I feel like it could have been a much shorter novel than it is. But then again, that's just my opinion, which could obviously be biased by like my tastes and my likes. Moving on to my favorite section, murder mysteries and psychological thrillers. Now this is the genre of books that I have been reading since forever, whether it was reading Famous Five and The Secret Seven. I love thrillers, murder mysteries, whether it's like robberies, whatever it is, like detective novels. That's the kind of thing I like reading. I love Nancy Drew, I loved Hardy Boys. So the books that I love reading even now are the spy detective thriller kind of books. So the first one on that list is Murder on the Orient Express, which is an Agatha Christie novel, very famous. It's a really famous novel. It's a Hercule Poirot novel, which if anybody has ever read a murder mystery in your life, you know who Agatha Christie is and you know who Hercule Poirot is. He's like the most famous fictional spy, and it was also turned into a film, I think in 2017. As usual, as is characteristic for Agatha Christie novels, it had a lot of characters, but Agatha Christie knows what she's doing when she's like writing these characters and tying them into like the storyline. The ending is like so great where all the threads connect, and it's like Agatha Christie novel endings give me so much satisfaction because I'm like, yes, like this is how this was supposed to end. It's just an amazing novel. If you're somebody who's like just started reading murder mysteries, or if you want to start reading murder mysteries, then I highly suggest you start with this one. Okay, book number 2 in this category is Destination Unknown, which is another Agatha Christie novel. The best part about this novel is that it didn't feature any like super spy. Neither Hercule Poirot nor Miss Marple. It's like a standalone. This novel had so many plot twists, and so to give you guys like a bit of background on it, you might want to look up trigger warnings for this before I like say the next part. This woman who's like depressed and she's about to end her life gets offered an opportunity to like go on an adventure, or like she doesn't exactly know that she's being sent in as a spy almost. So she decides to go ahead with it, and that's how the book starts. And then it ties into a lot of things where there's scientists involved. There's like a large organization who's basically getting all these great minded people from all over the world and putting them in one facility where they're supposed to like research and do work for them. So that's the kind of like, that's how the plot goes on. Like a really good plot. It's fast paced. The next book, or rather the next 2 books that I'm going to talk about are One of Us is Lying and One of Us is Next by Karen M. McManus. These 2 books, so the first book is One of Us is Lying and the second book is One of Us is Next. These 2 books are absolutely amazing, and like One of Us is Lying was her debut novel, and like I am a fan of her work after this because the first book was so good. And so basically I hadn't read murder mysteries for a while because in between I was reading romance novels, and so I decided to restart murder mysteries with this book, One of Us is Lying. I would give both these books 5 out of 5. Great plot. They both have the multiple point of views, which adds so much to the story, because when you read about the same thing from different characters' point of view, at some point you feel like each of them is a suspect, but then it's not predictable. You will never guess the ending till it actually ends. There's I think the first book became a mini series, not a mini series. I think the first book became a Netflix series last year. I'm not sure if it was last year or if it was like earlier this year. And the characters' backstories are absolutely amazing, and there's so much more to each character than meets the eye. Because like on surface value, it's just like the typical 5 high school characters. A brain, a princess, a jock, an outcast weirdo character, and a druggy criminal character. These are like the stereotypical 5 high school categories, social or like high school social groups. So these 5 characters are like put together in one room. From that's where the murder mystery starts. But she's absolutely done justice to each of the characters, and also their relationships with each other are like so well written. It's kind of like The Breakfast Club and Pretty Little Liars. Like if The Breakfast Club and Pretty Little Liars had like a combined thing, I feel like it would be One of Us is Lying. Absolutely loved it. And in the second novel, it's like the juniors of the characters in the first novel are there. I highly recommend it if you're somebody who's starting off murder mysteries and you don't want to read like Agatha Christie, because she's kind of one of the more well-known or like older authors in this genre. Then you should definitely start with any of the Karen McManus novels. I've also read one more of hers, which was I think Two Can Keep a Secret, which was also a really great book, though it wasn't as good as this one. So these two, so I haven't mentioned it in this video. The next novel in this category is I've Got My Eyes on You by Mary Higgins Clark. Now for those of you who follow me on Instagram, you already know that I read this book quite recently, and you already know my thoughts on it. I would give this novel a solid 4 out of 5. It's absolutely fantastic. It's easy to read. It's fast paced, so there's no like, you don't have to force yourself to read it. You want to keep reading because the chapters are really short, well written. Highly recommended for somebody who isn't into very intense or very gory like murder crime thrillers. You may want to look up some trigger warnings for this, though they're not that gory, but you should still look them up, because there are some themes which are a bit triggering for some people. The characters are really well written, and the best part is that the characters are like simple, as in their connections to each other are simple. It's right on the face value, like okay, this is this person's child, this is this person's best friend. There's no like complicated relationships among the characters, which is something which Agatha Christie and some of the other authors in this genre tend to do a lot. So this book is not like that. It's very straightforward, and it kind of feels like you're watching a show instead of reading a book. So the next book in this genre is Sharp Objects by Gillian Flynn. Now this is a psychological thriller. She is the queen of psychological thrillers, but I personally would rate this novel 3.5 out of 5 stars. This has also been turned into a mini series, by the way. It's a very dark, gothic, like mind-twisting kind of plot in this one. The writing is truly fantastic. It's quite gripping, but the only reason why I'm giving it 3.5 stars is because I found it a bit too scary in some areas. Like, I'm not a person who reads like psychological thrillers normally. I read murder mysteries, but they don't involve any psychological play kind of elements. Some of the scenes that have been described in this are a bit too difficult to like imagine or like understand for somebody who's never read a psychological thriller before. Also, you may want to look up trigger warnings for this one, because there is mention of self-harm, assault and other things, which are quite dark themes, which I wasn't used to reading. Also, the novel does get a bit like, it's a bit slow in the beginning till you actually come to the point where you want to read and finish it. Till that point, it's like I was kind of pushing myself to read it. Gillian Flynn novels are very highly rated. Like Gone Girl is a sensational novel which everybody knows about. I'm sure you've heard of the name. Next novel in this genre is The Runaway Julie by John Grisham. Now this novel I would rate it a good 4.5, a good like 4 stars out of 5. It has a great plot. It's amazingly written as usual with John Grisham. His writing is amazing. He's like a very famous author, obviously. You can't go wrong with his books. Now moving on to the others. Now these are books which don't necessarily fit into these two genres. So the first one is Breakaway by Cat Spears. Now this is a coming of age type of novel, which I would give it a 3.5 stars out of 5. It features 4 teen boys and how their relationships have changed. They're like childhood friends and how their relationships have changed now that they're in high school. It features dealing with death and grief, poverty, family issues. It also has some elements of teen romance in it. It has social hierarchy, like that's a very prominent theme in this novel, and I was pretty glad that I picked this up randomly. Okay, the next novel that I'm going to talk about is Flawed by Cecelia Ahern. Now I believe there are other books after Flawed, like there's sequels to it, but I've only read the first one. I would give this book again a 3 or 3.5 out of 5. It's a great young adult novel, but I think it's more suited for like younger teens. So I'd say like the 12 to 14, 15 age group. I think it's better suited for them. It introduces some pretty like good themes, such as questioning authority, morality, ethics, perfectionism. It's kind of a dystopian future where basically there's this one. So how we have courts. So in this dystopian future, there's a court for ethics, which basically the job of this court is to judge whether these people, even though they haven't done like criminal offenses, whether they've done something which is ethically or morally wrong. And they have a whole court proceeding for determining whether somebody is flawed or not. And then the flawed people have different set of rules that they have to live by for the rest of their lives. The head judge, his son's girlfriend is the main character, and basically she does something like she makes a choice which ends up with her going to court and to see whether she's flawed or not. So that was it. Those were most of the books that I read in the past year. I have read a bunch of other books which I will put their names in the description as well, in case you guys want some more recommendations other than these ones. I do hope that you guys end up reading some of the novels that I've talked about today, and if you do, then do let me know in my Instagram DMs or in the comments how much you would rate those books and what was your favorite part of the books. Also, if you've already read any of these books, then let me know which one you like best and why. And stay tuned for another video. Don't forget to like, share, comment and subscribe. Thank you so much for watching.
Like a happy child at worst.